The recycled air tasted of ozone and rust, a dead, metallic tang that coated the back of Kael's throat. It was the flavor of tombs, whether they were kilometers deep under an ocean of water or buried in the gut of a hollowed-out rock hurtling through the void. Gravity here was a suggestion, a weak, clinging film that made each step a controlled float. His mag boots hummed, a low thrum that vibrated up through the soles of his feet and into his bones, the only constant sound in the cavernous silence of the abandoned iridium mine on Asteroid 732. Ankos. The silence itself felt heavy, a physical presence that pressed in on his eardrums. It was the kind of quiet that wasn't an absence of noise, but a holding of breath. Just another bug hunt, Commander Valerius had called it, his voice a disembodied sneer of static and condescension over the comms an hour ago, sweep and clear. A residual nest left over from the initial planetary essays. Simple work for simple assets. Simple assets. Recycled trash. Cannon fodder with serial numbers. Kael's hands, wrapped in the scarred synth leather of his gauntlets, clenched into fists. The pressure of 1,000 atmospheres was nothing. He knew pressure. This was different. This was the slow, crushing weight of being a cog in a machine you knew was designed to grind you into dust. The data they'd pulled from the Endeavor's black box was a cancer in his mind, a shard of glass working its way through his thoughts. Calculated losses, acceptable attrition rates. The war wasn't a crusade for humanity's survival. It was a resource management algorithm, and they, Squad Gamma -7, were a rounding error. He scanned the chasm of the primary mining conduit. Emergency lights, powered by dying capacitors, through long, skeletal shadows that danced and writhed with every slight movement. The main power was dead. Everything was coated in a fine red dust, the ghost of millions of tons of ore ripped from the asteroid's heart. Ahead of him, Corbin moved with the heavy, deliberate gait of a man encased in ordnance. His M-90 rotary cannon held at a low ready. The weapon looked like a tumor of steel and ammunition feeds, an obscenity of firepower in the suffocating stillness. Behind Kael, Ren's lighter footsteps were a nervous counterpoint, the tech specialist's eyes constantly flitting from her datapad to the deep pools of darkness that bled into the edges of her helmet's floodlight. Then came Sloane, her movements fluid and economical, her medic's pack a promise of salvation and a testament to the Hegemony's expectation of injury. She met his gaze through their polarized visors, a brief, sharp connection. He could feel her disapproval, radiating across the 20 meters that separated them. A cold wave in the recycled air. She thought he was reckless, that his distrust of command bordered on insubordination. She wasn't wrong. But she hadn't seen the casualty projections on the Endeavor's logs, hadn't seen the comms transcripts that spoke of entire platoons like columns in a ledger. Bringing up the rear was Jax. The kid was their ghost, their canary in this cosmic coal mine. Kael kept one ear tuned to the squad comm, but his senses were really focused on the sound of Jax's breathing the quiet. hitching rhythm that was their first and only reliable warning. For the last 10 minutes, it had been steady. 2. Steady. Anything, Jax. Kael's voice was a low rasp in the private channel, sandpaper on silk. A burst of static. Then, a whisper. Quiet. It's hollow, like a bell after it's been rung. There's an echo of something, but nothing real. That was worse than a scream. The hive mind was a constant bioelectric hum, a background noise in the psychic spectrum that Jax was cursed to hear. For it to be silent meant one of two things. Either the nest was truly dead and abandoned, or something was listening. Something was waiting. Kael felt the skin on his arms crawl, the fine hair standing on end under the clammy synthweave of his undersuit. His own instincts, honed in the silent, crushing dark of the abyss, were screaming at him. The angles were wrong. The shadows were too deep. The silence was too loud. Valerius, he subvocalized, switching to the command channel. Voss here. The conduit is clear, but my linker is reporting a null field. Something's not right. The reply was instantaneous, laced with impatience. A null field, Sergeant. Are we inventing tactical jargon now? Your orders are to proceed to the primary drilling hub and confirm the nest is neutralized. The thermal scans from orbit were conclusive. Move. With respect, sir, thermal scans can be spoofed. A hibernating brood queen can mask its heat signature by... Your respect is noted and disregarded. Voss Valerius cut in, his voice hardening into chipped flint. You are a recycled asset, a tool. You are not paid to think. You are commanded to act. Now, get to the drilling hub, or I'll have you scraping nutrient paste residue off the mess hall floor with your teeth. Valerius out. The channel clicked dead, leaving the profound, tomb-like silence to rush back in. Kael felt a hot, acidic anger rise in his chest. A tool. An expendable component. He looked at his squad, at Corbin's blind obedience, at Wren's palpable fear, at Sloane's defiant idealism, at Jax's terrible fragility. They weren't tools. They were people, fed into a grinder for a cause that was a lie. All right, you heard him, Kael broadcast to the squad, his voice deliberately flat, betraying none of the rage boiling beneath the surface. Let's move. Corbin, you're on point. Eyes up. They pushed deeper. The conduit opened into a vast, spherical chamber. The primary drilling hub. In the center stood the colossal ore processor, a silent, rust-red behemoth of gears and crushers, its gantries and catwalks, creating a complex web of steel high above them. The floor was a metal grate over a chasm that plunged into absolute blackness. The air here was thicker, carrying a new scent on its recycled currents. It was acrid and organic, a cloying chemical sweetness like rotting fruit and burnt sugar. The smell of xenomorphid biology. The smell of death. And then it happened. Jax stopped dead. His breath hitched, a sharp, wet gasp that crackled over the calm. No. Kael was at his side in a second, one hand on the kid's shoulder plate. Jax, what is it? Talk to me. Jax's head snapped back, his helmet clanging against the low-hanging pipework. A scream tore from his throat, not a sound of fear, but of pure, unadulterated agony. It was a sound that didn't belong to a human voice. It was a shriek of tearing metal and splintering bone, amplified and distorted by his helmet's comm unit. It's not a null field, he choked out, his body seizing, his limbs locked in a rigid tremor. It's not empty, it's a vacuum. It was sucking everything in, listening. Oh gods, it's listening with our minds. Sloane was there instantly, her med scanner whirring as she ran it over Jax's helmet. Massive neurological spike. He's redlining. Kael, we have to sedate him. But Kael was looking past them, into the oppressive darkness of the hub. Jax's words echoed in his mind, listening with our minds. They hadn't been walking into an empty room. They'd been walking into a psychic Venus flytrap. The silence wasn't an absence of the Hive. It was the Hive holding its breath, using their own consciousness as the trigger. Corbin, Ren, defensive circle. Now, Kael's command voice, the one he hadn't used since his discharge, cut through the panic. It was a voice that expected and received instant obedience. Corbin swung the massive rotary cannon around, its barrels spinning up with a hungry, electric whine that ripped the silence to shreds. Ren fumbled with her sidearm, her faceplate a pale, terrified moon in the gloom. What is it? Sloane demanded, her hands hovering over Jax's trembling form. Kael, what did he mean? It's an ambush, Kael said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. He raised his own pulse rifle, the weapon feeling like a familiar extension of his will. They knew we were coming. They let us walk right into the killing jar. As if his words were the final trigger, the world erupted. The sound came first, a high-frequency shriek that vibrated through the metal floor, through the very air. A sound that bypassed the ears and went straight for the spine. It was the sound of a billion chittering insects compressed into a single, mind-flaying syllable. Then the light. Not from their floodlights, but from below. Through the grated floor, the abyss ignited. A sickly, bioluminescent purple light bloomed upwards, revealing what lay beneath them. It wasn't a chasm. It was a pit. And the pit was filled, wall to wall, with a writhing, pulsating carpet of chitin and claws. Thousands of them, tens of thousands. A sea of xenomorphids, their segmented bodies twisting over one another, their multifaceted eyes glowing with that malevolent purple energy. They hadn't been hibernating. They'd been waiting. Contact, Corbin roared, his voice a primal bellow of rage and fear. He opened fire. The M-90 cannon was a force of nature. It didn't just fire. It vomited a torrent of white-hot plasma that slammed into the grate. The noise was deafening, a continuous, apocalyptic roar that shook the entire chamber. Metal screamed as it was superheated, glowing cherry red before vaporizing. Chunks of the floor vanished, and the first wave of creatures surging up through the gaps were annihilated in bursts of purple ichor and incinerated chitin. The stench was overwhelming, a wave of cooked alien meat and ozone that was thick enough to chew. But for every dozen he killed, 100 more scrambled up the support pillars and the walls, their claws finding purchase on the corroded steel. They moved with an unnatural, fluid speed, a tide of black, segmented bodies and razor-sharp limbs flowing up from the depths. They weren't mindless animals. They moved with a terrifying, coordinated grace, fanning out, flanking them, using the gantries and machinery as cover. Time seemed to dilate, stretching into a syrupy, slow-motion nightmare. Kael tracked a target skittering along a pipe overhead. He saw the way its 6 legs moved, in perfect, staggered synchronicity. He saw the drool of acidic saliva dripping from its serrated mandibles, sizzling as it hit the metal below. He saw the cold, alien intelligence in its cluster of eyes. He squeezed the trigger. His pulse rifle bucked against his shoulder, spitting a bolt of kinetic energy that hit the creature dead center. It exploded in a spray of gore, its dismembered parts raining down. He fired again, and again. It was a rhythm. Breathe, acquire, fire, breathe. The muscle memory from a life he'd tried to forget came flooding back. He was no longer a salvager. He was an officer again. And this was his unit. Ren, target the support struts on the main gantry. Bring it down on the west corridor. Block their advance, he yelled over the cacophony. I can't get a lock, she stammered, her pulse pistol firing wildly. Use a grenade. To his left, Sloane had managed to half-drag, half-carry Jax behind the relative cover of a massive, inert generator. The kid was still convulsing, his screams now a constant, low moan of psychic feedback. Sloane wasn't a soldier, but she moved with a medic's grim purpose, pulling her own sidearm and firing with a steady, practiced aim at any creature that got too close. She was protecting her patient, protecting her squad. In that moment, Kael felt a surge of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: respect. And a cold, hard knot of fear for her safety. Corbin was their linchpin, a roaring bastion of defiance. His cannon chewed through the waves of aliens, creating a flickering wall of death around them. But Kael saw the heat gauge on the weapon's side, climbing into the red. It couldn't sustain that rate of fire, and the ammunition counter was ticking down with terrifying speed. A new sound joined the chorus, a deeper, resonant chittering. A command tone that cut through the chaos. From the largest of the tunnels leading out of the hub, something emerged. It was massive, easily twice the size of the others. Its carapace a dull, armored, black, scarred, and ancient. A ridged crest flared from its skull, and its primary claws were thick and heavy, like obsidian scythe. A Praetorian. A Hive Queen's personal guard. This wasn't a residual nest. This was an active, thriving colony. Valerius hadn't just been wrong. He had lied. He'd sent them here to die. The thought was so cold, so certain, it cut through the adrenaline. This was the algorithm at work. They were here to confirm a threat level, a data point in a cost-benefit analysis, and their deaths would be the confirmation. The Praetorian ignored the plasma storm from Corbin's cannon, its heavy armor deflecting the bolts with showers of sparks. It had one target: them. It lowered its head and charged, its powerful legs eating up the distance with terrifying speed. "Corbin, on me. Focus fire on the big one," Kael yelled, planting his feet and laying down a stream of concentrated fire at the creature's head. The bolts ricocheted harmlessly off its armored crest. Corbin swung the heavy cannon around, the barrels glowing white-hot. "I'm almost out." Reloading, the cannon spun down. The wall of plasma vanished, and in that sudden, relative quiet, the sound of 100 skittering creatures seemed to multiply tenfold. The Praetorian charged into the gap. It slammed into Corbin with the force of a freight train. The big man yelled, a sound of surprise and agony as he was lifted off his feet and thrown backward. His M-90 cannon flew from his hands, clattering across the grate. Kael watched in horrified slow motion as one of the Praetorian's scythe-like claws lanced out, punching straight through Corbin's chest plate. There was a sickening crunch of ceramic, metal, and bone. Corbin's body went limp. "No," Ren screamed. The Praetorian screeched in triumph, shaking Corbin's body from its claw, like a dog shaking a rat. It turned its attention to the rest of them, its multifaceted eyes locking onto Kael. "This is it. This is how it ends." The thought was strangely calm, not as a salvager drowning in the dark, but as a soldier on his feet, fighting a war that was a lie. Then, a new voice cut through the calm, clear and cold, stripped of all its earlier arrogance. It was Valerius. "Squad Gamma -7, your position has been compromised. The primary nest is larger than anticipated. Your sacrifice will provide valuable threat assessment data. Hegemony thanks you for your contribution." The line went dead. No extraction. No support. Just a pre-written epitaph delivered from the safety of orbit. They hadn't just been sent here to die, they had been sentenced. The Praetorian took a step forward, lowering its crested head. Kael raised his rifle, the cold metal of the stock, a familiar comfort against his cheek. He met the creature's alien gaze. Around him, the hive closed in, a chittering, inexorable tide of black chitin. The weight of one lie was heavier than any ocean, and they were drowning in it.